Hello, you're on Initiative Africa. My name is Asha Sampath. Welcome to this new edition of your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. Let's get on with the show with our top stories today. He managed HEC Carthage, the first business school in Africa. Academic, former Minister of Higher Education in Tunisia, Khalbous has lived several lives before taking up a new challenge to promote the Francophonie in the international university world. At the head of the Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie, he took up the challenge of connecting the university with the science and economic spheres. He's our guest of the week.
The Francophone University Agency is an organisation that helps and supports French-speaking universities around the world, and with their restructurings or their projects.
African Books on a Bus, a fascinating nomadic library bookshop, wanders through Europe before taking the road to West Africa.
The day before yesterday I was in Harlem, afterwards in Tarascon, all thanks to the African book truck. It allows me to make some exciting encounters.
Putting an end to youth unemployment thanks to well-targeted vocational training. Mission accomplished with SELAM College in Addis Ababa.
I decided to take this professional training course because it interested me and because I want to show that women can work just as well as men in every kind of job.
Faced with competition from big Western houses, the African publishing sector was already struggling to grow. Now hit hard by the impact of COVID-19, it has experienced a decline in its activity over the last 2 years. A French association based in Arles in France decided to remedy this situation through a rather creative approach. Paroles Indigo, that's its name, offers an original solution, to say the least. An African book truck or a travelling library to promote authors and African publishing. Our journalist Lionel Cochois followed part of its journey.
The vehicle, known as a fast bus in Senegal, began its journey in the south of France and now is turning a few heads in the streets of Paris. Financed by crowdfunding and public funds, the brightly decorated library-cum-bookshop on wheels has travelled across the country to reach its destination, the Paris Plage. The aim is to offer the locals a taste of a made-in-Africa literature.
The African book truck is the idea of creating a mobile bookstore library that can meet everyone in town centres, in the city outskirts, in the countryside, everywhere to meet people, readers, and offer space that is both a library where you can sit and read on site, the bookstore inside the truck, a place for artists.
Like a well-thought-through storyline, the idea did not come overnight. In French-speaking Africa, approximately 3/4 of books come from French publishers. In France, the presence of African publishing is almost non-existent.
It seems important to me that there should be some kind of balance, in other words, that the multiplicity of authors existing on the African continent and who bring the voice of contemporary Africa can be better and more often heard.
C'est les éditions Coris? Oui, c'est les éditions Coris Livres. Je suis bibliothécaire à la bibliothèque Hergé.
I am a librarian at the Hergé Library and we work a lot on African albums with teachers. And I'm a little shocked because the albums we offer, which are published in France, do not all reflect the current image of Africa.
This bookstore, the selection of African authors and publishers from partner publishing houses, has several advantages. A closer look at the continent and modern stories that reflect the Africa of today. Publishing the books in the regional language makes it possible to reach a wider audience.
The idea is to offer vibrant contemporary Africa, Africa in all its forms and diversity, since the continent is vast. With multiple cultures, it is also an opportunity for dialogues with parents, children, so that everyone can better understand the cultures of the continent.
Ces livres-là, on nous les donne pas à l'école.
These books are not provided in schools.
C'est bien que des personnes.
It's good that people like them step up so we can be educated.
Qu'on puisse s'instruire.
A chance to discover African literature for readers sometimes separated from their cultural roots. One of the goals that helped convince the project's partner institutions, and a concept that excited the director of Bibliocité, which acts as the cultural coordinator to the libraries of Paris.
These are African publishing houses that are not widely distributed in France, books that are bilingual which allow everyone to access these cultures, to share them, and for many of us around the Villette Basin to access their own maternal or paternal culture. It is a crossroads of culture that we find very important and very enriching. The author's name is Khalbous Ba. He is a librarian at the French Institute in Conakry. He is a wonderful children's literature author and mediator. Wonderful person around children's literature and works with the author and illustrator Irina Condé.
Meeting the challenge faced by African authors and publishers to export their work beyond their own borders, the nomadic bookstore uses local distribution and communication to help spread the word about the continent's authors, a method that invites the public to share in the joys of reading and a rich cultural diversity.
Contact with a real book is still irreplaceable, first of all because it becomes a place for dialogue and cultural exchange. The pleasure of reading with children and parents around the same book is a pleasure that cannot be compared.
Beyond discovering new cultures, the travelling library uses workshops, meetings and book fairs to offer visitors the opportunity to learn about the wealth of modern African creativity, a sounding board for these African authors. It's a very good idea because this kind of project was lacking in France. The African Book Truck also allows me to promote my own work here in France. Thanks to the African Book Truck, I work in different places. The day before yesterday, I was in Arles, afterwards in Tarascon. All thanks to the African Book Truck. It allows me to make some exciting encounters. The African Book Truck has met with success at institutions and festivals. It will continue to travel through France and Europe for another 3 years, then return to West Africa, where an Ivorian publishing house will take over and continue promoting African authors. A homecoming for the mobile ambassador of African publishing and its many stories, and a children's novel about the adventures of the African Book Truck by author-illustrator Christian Epagna is soon expected to be rolling off the presses.
As I mentioned earlier, our guest of the day is a great specialist in the academic world, Slim Khalbous, now rector of the Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie, presented last month in Bucharest during the 60th anniversary of the AUF, a white paper of the scientific Francophonie. It is an exceptional document that structures the 15,000 responses to a global consultation. Rector Slim Khalbous explained to our journalists Laurence Soustras and Lionel Cauchois how this consultation inspired the new French-speaking university strategy. Professor Slim Khalbous, hello. Since 2002, you have been the rector of the Francophone University Agency, the AUF. What is exactly the role of this agency?
The Francophone University Agency is an organization that helps and supports French-speaking universities around the world, and with their restructurings or their projects. There are two categories of university. There are universities in French-speaking countries, and we're there to support them in any structural reforms, as we are also partners with these countries in terms of educational and university policies. And secondly, there are the non-French-speaking countries that are also members of our organization. Our role is to support them as well, but also to convince them to develop degree courses and to take part in cooperation programs and initiatives with the French-speaking scientific world. We wear these two hats, which are complementary, but which all work in the French-speaking scientific area.
You've just held the first Francophone Science Week in Bucharest, Romania. How did you develop this concept? We don't necessarily think of the Francophone in scientific terms.
In
2020, the AUF reached more than 1,000 members between universities and research structures, all part of our network, and we have therefore become the leading university network in the world. It's important to be known and be highly visible. There is tremendous French-speaking scientific knowledge, but which is perhaps not sufficiently publicized. The idea is to showcase our extraordinary network and to properly celebrate the 60th anniversary of our organization, since the AUF was created in Montreal in September 1961. In September 2021, we were exactly 60 years old. At the same time, there is increasingly strong support from many French-speaking or Francophile nations for the idea of cooperating in a common scientific area. All this meant it became necessary to combine these events into one significant showcase that makes an impact. We launched the first Francophone Science Assizes to provide content for science in the Francophone area because it is a unifying concept, which is relatively new, even though it's been talked about in the past. But we didn't really make much progress with this concept, so we put it back on the table. And then we brought together the ministers of education and research from all over the French-speaking world, and it was an excellent turnout. There were more than 30 ministers, half of whom were physically present in times of a pandemic. It's no small feat, and there was a lot of enthusiasm from the ministers to increase cooperation within the French-speaking scientific community.
While in Bucharest, you presented a white paper on Francophone sciences and the new strategy for 2021 to 2025. Could you probably describe it for our viewers?
Ce livre blanc a été un des moments forts.
The white paper was one of the high points, both in terms of excitement and substance. We unveiled, for the first time anywhere, the white paper on Francophone sciences. As I've said, we are trying to give content to the concept of science in the French-speaking world. It was a matter of providing substance to this concept. We looked to university academics, whom we interviewed and with whom we'd been talking for several months. It's what we called a global Francophone consultation for science. We also spoke with a lot of students. We interviewed teachers, leading academics, rectors, deans, university presidents. We questioned the politicians, ministers of education, deputies, members of parliament, that sort of person. And then there is civil society to work with us on the opening of the university, on the environment also, scientific associations and certification agencies. In short, organizations that are part of the university education system. The result was amazing. 15,000 responses from over 75 countries provided an incredible wealth of data. We said to ourselves, this should be published in a book, analyzed and structured. And the strength of the French University Agency is very high-level scientific work. We are genuinely proud of this work that we are making available to all interested academics. They can download it for free from the AUF website. The document organized all the responses we'd received from all those we'd asked, from their needs and priorities to their constraints and their hopes in relation to the French-speaking scientific world. So I hope this is a landmark book. It's a reference book because it gives a real overview of everything that's being done. It's already proved useful because the new strategy that we proposed and that we have now validated within the framework of our General Assembly in Bucharest was essentially based and built around the comments and the priorities expressed by our members. Therefore, the white paper is available to everyone so it can be debated and discussed. The white paper presents themes and country files. The country files are a detailed analysis by region or by country, specific to the education and university system.
Welcome to the second part of our show. What if the problem of unemployment among young Africans also found its solution in technical and vocational education? This is the bet of the SELAM David Rochley Technical and Vocational College. This institution was created by an Ethiopian NGO with the aim to offer young people the possibility of following vocational training. Today, it has forged partnerships with some 50 companies to train these young people. It's worth pointing out that a third of the 600 students are women, and more than half of them are no longer hesitant to turn to trades in electricity or heavy equipment. Kumara Gamashu and François Baudry met this socially engaged school.
According to World Bank estimates, there are more than 10 million jobs available for trained technicians in Africa. But there are no takers. For want of technical skills, many millions of young Africans are sitting on their hands. The African Union's Commission for Human Development agrees and intends to boost technical and vocational training. Education ministers gathered in Addis Ababa for the first meeting of the Committee for Technical and Professional Education overwhelmingly supported the African Union's position. To prove that actions speak louder than words, 10 young Africans chosen from across the continent for their entrepreneurship presented their own projects during a full assembly, after which they were distinguished at an award ceremony. The awards are just the beginning.
These awards are very important because it's a demonstration of the paradigm shift in provision of technical and vocational education and training in Africa, because this is what is going to make the biggest difference in making the African youth bulge become an economic, demographic and social dividend. This is what will enable our young people to get the skills they need, not just to look for jobs, because many are jobless even as it is, but actually to become job creators.
We met one of the award winners. The SELAM College was founded in the suburbs of Addis Ababa. For the past 20 years, the school has been providing technical and professional training with a clear social mission. Most of the students find employment on graduating. Others are determined to set up their own businesses.
I decided to take this professional training course because it interested me and because I want to show that women can work just as well as men in every kind of job. When I leave the school with my qualifications, I would like to set up in business repairing cars. I'm learning mechanical maintenance for heavy goods vehicles and earth-moving machines. When I've graduated, I would like to work for a while in a company, but after that I want to set up my own garage, God willing.
Established in 1989 by the Ethiopian NGO Village des Orphelins, the SELAM College was initially intended to provide the village orphans with the technical and professional skills required to find work. The school was a resounding success and soon had to cater for demand from young people from across the region. A lot has changed at SELAM in the past 20 years. When it was founded, the school had 19 students. Now, the 70-strong teaching staff at SELAM provides free education for 430 students.
From the beginning till now, there are a lot of progress in SELAM. Previously, SELAM have started the training with the simple welding technology, but now we have 11 training streams engaged. That the trainings have an accreditation from the Ministry of Education from level 1 to level 4.
Thanks to partnerships with companies such as Volvo, the SELAM College now has the resources it needs to go to the next level, without losing its unique social dimension. Its most illustrious former students now teach at the school, while others work in the SELAM College workshop, making parts for clients.
I was starting here to study before 3 years ago by metal engineering production management, and I'm level 4 students. And then, yeah, I just complete the whole 3 years to study all the courses that I have to finish and to get a COC exam. That means the national assessment of the country. It's have exams in each level. So I just done all the levels. And then, yeah, I just graduated from this SELAM Technical and Vocational Center. And now I start to working in this CNC machine.
Hundreds of young Ethiopians are in competition for a place at the school. True to their mission, the college directors are keen to make sure female candidates get their chance to work in technical trades.
We are giving attention for the females because in Ethiopia, most of the time females are females are staying in home. But now, these days, we are trying to insist women to come in front and have this technical knowledge. And we are working on that.
In Kenya, the DRC, Senegal and Botswana, success stories like the SELAM College are increasingly common across Africa. They are often the result of young people's initiatives to find a way out of unemployment. They are the tiny acorns that grow into mighty oaks, mobilizing the continent's economic and political players.
Let's get back to our guest, Slim Khalbous, Rector of the Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie. He tells us about the Bucharest Manifesto that wants to establish a French-speaking scientific diplomacy and which should be signed soon. You mentioned constraints. Which grievances struck you the most personally?
It's easy to give you a general answer. Why? Well, because the 5 axes the AUF will prioritize between 2021 and 2025 are those which are the most cited in our global consultation, and therefore which appear in the white paper. These axes are essentially the internationalization of universities, networking, partnerships, employability, and entrepreneurship. It's a big challenge for most of the countries of the South today, because for years we dreamed of developing more skills. We dreamed of having more young people at university. And finally, in Africa, for example, enormous efforts have been made for the past 15-20 years to have many more young people in university. The paradox is that after all these years of effort, we find ourselves with an unemployment rate of graduates even higher than before, because we have not been able to open up the job market, because quality has not necessarily followed quantity. There are many elements like that, important questions for our host countries that are at the heart of our strategy, the employability of graduates. Then there's the digital transformation that everyone is talking about. Everything is talking about it because it was impacted by the crisis, and even the most skeptical are now convinced. But it's a question of how to do it. Well, since we often talk about digital transformation in relation to educational stability, it's classic distance learning so as not to interrupt lessons. We also talk about digital transformation in research so that research improves the use of technology. And we're also forgetting a third element that we incorporated into our strategy, and that is governance. University structures in the countries of the South sometimes have difficulties with top-heavy management, administration, and so on. Putting new technologies online and using them remotely to facilitate procedures, to facilitate the management of student education is also something that has been called for, and we have also introduced it into the strategy. So internationalization, partnership, employability, entrepreneurship, digital transformation and governance are very important elements. Another axis that emerges very clearly in the survey is research. And not just any research. It is research that provides solutions to our countries. Research, some call it applied research, others call it action research. In short, research and development. There are other organizations that are interested in basic, academic, classical research, and that's fine, because that is also necessary. But we, as a development agency, help universities and countries with their university education systems. We need to focus on what the universities can offer countries in the way of solutions. The economic role of universities is often underexploited, not emphasized enough in many countries, especially emerging countries. And therefore our role at the AUF is to help the universities to highlight their capacities, their competencies, also economic. We are often seen, we academics, as interesting in terms of training young people or in the social aspects too, but not enough about the economic aspect. However, the economic dimension is very important. Today, companies can find the answers many of them are looking for at university. But they don't approach us, the university. They look elsewhere for solutions, maybe abroad. Whereas at their own universities, universities in the South, universities not far from their businesses, may have the solution. But we don't talk to each other. Laboratories work in their own corner. Businesses have problems and go elsewhere. And it's the pooling of information between the business world and the university world that we have been talking about for years. And we have proposed very pragmatic solutions to solve this.
The ministers attending this week signed the Bucharest Manifesto. What is it concretely?
L'AUF veut travailler
AUF wants to find a different way to work with participating countries, beyond the pure scientific aspects, with university educational structures. We want to work with states and governments on their educational and university policies. Why? Because, quite simply, we have seen that when we are in contact with political decision makers, our actions are more effective, since we propose projects that are in line with the priorities of those countries. And so our manifesto clears the way for a policy of French-speaking scientific diplomacy, common to the French-speaking world. And that could only be done with the ministers in charge of education and higher education. We proposed this sharing of information and they quickly agreed to it. It's a wonderful piece of work. It's not quite signed yet because it's being co-drafted, something that we decided at the meeting. We're going to make a draft, a first version, which will be sent to the ministers who will amend it, validate it, and then we will publish this manifesto, and I hope it will prove to be one of the most interesting features of the summit.
Initiative Africa is over for today. You can catch the interview of Slim Khalbous in the replay section of our brand new news website, africaonair.com, as well as all the replays of our programs. And of course, you can also find us on all our social media channels. Feel free to share, like, and comment with the hashtag Initiative Africa TV show. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, I'll see you again with a new edition of Business Africa. Have a great week and goodbye.